Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the special committee, the Personnel Committee, the whole meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. We are streaming this committee live, as we will be doing on almost all our committee meetings. And as part of this process, we have 4 items on the agenda today. I think we're going to be moving them around a little bit, but I'll turn this portion of the agenda over to our City Administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt?
Thank you. I would like to move item number 1 to the end of the agenda, and we will not be broadcasting that live today. It is the Public Works Director interviews. For the confidentiality of the applicant, it's best that we don't televise that. So we'll go to item number 2, request for part-time staff member at the library. This request is actually coming as a part of a collaboration. We worked with the union. We have Scott Duranko, ASME president, here today, and we have Nancy, the department head at the library. We have a request from quite a few staff members that they're having a hard time with the day-to-day pulling them off of their duties to go cover lunches, breaks, et cetera. And we've been discussing for quite a while, Nancy, feel free to jump in, how to manage this a little better. And it's one of the first steps we've discussed was hiring a part-time staff member at the library to help facilitate breaks, lunches, vacation replacement, et cetera, so that the staff isn't being pulled in 15 different directions in one day. This is just for discussion. Sherry has included it in the budget for 2020, so it has been accounted for.
How many library employees do we have staff now? We have 8. Does that include you, Nancy? So we have 8, including the library director.
Yes, there's 2 positions we've never replaced. We had a part-time person, if you recall, when Ginger Trucano worked at the library. Ginger worked there for many years. She was our part-time staff person. And we also had Susan Kraus, who retired quite a few years ago. She was the cataloger, and she was a full-time position that we never did replace.
Right, and we're the library is open from 10 a.m. to 6 a.m. Monday through Friday, although employees report to work earlier, but 10 to 6 is when they're open Monday through Friday, and 8 staff people operate the facility Monday through Friday for that 8-hour period, as far as it's open to the public. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I do frequent the library from time to time, and there is some concern expressed about that, and the staff do their best to make it work. They try to take their behind-the-scenes work and bring it to the desks, but that becomes a challenge when you're waiting on people. I know that the library is probably the most frequented building in the entire city. Not only does it provide educational services and resources, but during the summer, it's a child care center. There's a lot of kids that are in there using the computers, using the books. In the wintertime, some of our less fortunate population utilize the library to stay warm. And I think that, as Britt had said, there's 2 positions that really haven't been filled. I think we need to do what we can to keep the library functioning and keep our employees happy. We have some very good employees over there who go above and beyond every day. Any one of the staff at the desk know those kids' names. They address them by names. They greet them every morning when they come in at 10, and they are doing childcare some days, and they are very good at it. So I really think that we need to support the part-time staff member and make sure that as we move forward, people know what their job is, and we make sure that we're utilizing the staff appropriately and they can work together to continue providing the great service over there.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So I have a quick question before we move forward with Councillor Paulson. Is this require a memorandum of understanding in the bargaining unit contract, number 1? Number 2, if it doesn't, or if it does, is the ASME representatives union on board with making this adjustment if it's not a contractual item in the contract now?
I do believe it is in the contract, because there was a person in that position at one time.
Technically, in the contract, you fill a full-time position before doing a part-time position.
Mm-hmm.
We discussed it before about bringing
Okay, so this, I just want to make sure whatever decision we made, if we move forward, it's not going to trigger a grievance based on contract language.
No, I won't trigger it.
We have been in discussion with AFSCME, it's been almost a half a year already about staffing at the library, what to do to alleviate some of these concerns.
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure going in different
And we appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Britt. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. So will this part-time position or staff member be more like a float?
Yeah, that's the theory behind it. They'd be able to go to any of the desks to cover.
So with that being said, will they have like certain duties or responsibilities, and will there be training for those? I mean, if they're going to be throughout the gamut, I guess I'm a little bit concerned about how that person fits in, and how the other employees, I guess, would navigate with that hire.
Nancy's been working on her staff, working on getting the training protocols down to a more exact science. Correct, Nancy? Correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, jump in.
Are we picking up Nancy on the, as her voice on the? No, so Nancy, would you please come to the podium? We appreciate it. So we are streaming this live so everybody can hear. Welcome, Nancy, thank you.
To answer your question, the part-time person would do the same duties as another library assistant. So they would be trained in those tasks.
And what would their hours be? Part-time hours? I mean, there's temporary, so it's got to be part-time, correct? Or is it temporary, full-time?
It's a permanent part-time position,
Okay, thank you.
that schedule.
And the
whatever
schedule
Nancy
would be
might
how
need.
many hours a week then for part-time?
20.
20 hours. Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Counselor Paulson? Please continue.
I think it answers my question. I think I'm on the more broader thought process of just each employee being kind of understanding where they fit in, to what department, and if you're going to have a crossover trained person, that they may just be able to work with the employees that are, have specific duties, so that they understand when they're crossing over to the different areas in the library, I think is just kind of what I was addressing. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson. Counselor Barberbo, excuse me.
Oh, yeah, you can call me Barnzelli, that's fine.
Counselor Barberbo, go ahead.
I'm having a huge problem with adding any more staff to this particular library, and I'm going to tell you why. We have a directive that we passed many years ago that library is supposed to be open on Saturdays. That's never happened, and in my book, that's insubordination by the individual that runs the library that did not put that into effect. That was an actual motion and passed by this city council. You figure it out, if they're open only 10 to 6, and there's 8 individuals there and an 8-hour shift apiece, and I don't know if they're paid lunch, are they paid lunch or not there?
No.
No, okay, so they're basically working 7.5 hours then on their shifts without a paid lunch, or if it's a 20-minute, they're working less. I think we need to see, and I've asked for this many times over the years, the schedule that Nancy has for that library, so we can take a look at that scheduling and reschedule how that works. I ran a pharmacy of 7 people that are open a lot many more hours than this, and if you schedule your people right, you don't have a problem with individuals and the lack of business being covered, because you figure out when your busy times are, you figure out when your slow times are, and you schedule. You don't have to bring in everybody early like I believe she does at this point in time to restock shelves, do other things. You should be able to do that during the daytime with that many people on staff when they're only open 5 days a week. So I'm having a huge problem, and I want to see that schedule that's being produced before I will vote to hire a part-time person, period.
Okay, thank you. If I may, could we call up Nancy back up to the podium? could you kind of give the council a little rundown explanation of the scheduling process? Yeah, but, yeah, I know, I think we'd like to see a copy of it as well, Councilor Baraboo. But just, could you give us, for the edification of those listening and streaming and for all of us, how does this schedule actually work when, frankly, majority of libraries are open on Saturday and we're not? So could you give us kind of an understanding of your scheduling process?
Sure, I'll be glad to send a copy of, for the last few months, like, for August on. The reason that this person is necessary is because we have people who are out sick, people who are on vacation. Everybody works a night shift, and you have to have another big issue is the fact that we have 2 desks that need to be staffed, upstairs and downstairs, and people can't be, you have to, for security purposes, have to have more than 2 people there, like, at a time. So you can't just leave, just have 2 people. So this is how it works out. We have meetings that have to be attended and various things that go on. And this is like the minimum number of people that can make it function for that particular number of hours. A long time ago, we did study after study on when people actually use the library for years and months. Particular sampling weeks were used to determine that, in fact, Saturdays were the least used days out of the year. I mean, far more people come in Monday through Friday than actually ever, even when we were open on Saturdays, than ever actually attended. People have an idea that they would like to come in on Saturdays, but they didn't actually show up back then. So that's why Saturdays were not kept.
So then my question would be, Nancy, and if I may, so how many staffing people did you have at the library when Saturdays were open?
We had 13.5 FTEs.
So you had 13.5 FTEs, and right now you have 8.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
And what you're saying, I think, if I understand this correctly, the demographics of how, so you're splitting staff from upstairs and downstairs, is that correct?
There's 2 desks. There's circulation desk in the media department as well as one at the main desk.
So
because-
2 have to be upstairs and
Right.
2 have to be downstairs?
Right. And the other issue with that is bathrooms. The bathrooms are downstairs. Even with security cameras, there still needs to be some sort of monitoring of the area.
So I just have one more question for you. How many employees start at 8 o'clock in the morning, and how many employees start at 10 o'clock in the morning?
Jimmy, the maintenance person actually starts at 7. 4 people start at 8, and 2 people start at 9,
At 9. And you're open till when?
6.
6. So there's the hour break, and
Right, they get an 8-hour shift from 9 to 6 with an hour for lunch.
thank you very much. Okay. Anybody else?
Yes, if I may.
Yes, please.
We talked about back in July on having the library open on Saturdays. And in order to, like she said, they had 13 full-time employees. We proposed to hire one full-time person, 1 part-time person, and 2 casuals in order to cover everything that needs to be covered to open it up on Saturdays.
Right, and we'd be really happy and excited if it could be like that. That would be great. I mean, we'd be happy to be open on Saturdays if we had the proper number of staff as he just described.
Yeah, I think the question I had, and you both answered that question, how many employees did you have when you're open on Saturdays, and how many employees you have now when you're not open on Saturdays? So there's a little bit of a difference there in staffing as we move forward.
To take this a step further, the request today is just to alleviate the immediate concerns we have right now.
Right,
with
correct, I
staffing.
understand.
Yep.
And, yep, thank you, Brett. Okay, Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. At that, excuse me, how long ago was that 13.5 FTE?
Well, I believe, when was the budget crunch? When did LGA get cut? Was that like 2000, what?
8.
2008.
2008, so it's been since then.
So has it been in the budget to maintain a 13.5, Sherry?
No.
And what is the budget currently, for FTE, what does the budget currently hold?
Right now, they're 6, and then we did put a part-time.
added the part-time in the budget
So
for
the part-time
2020.
is in the budget?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else have anything? I think the request by Counselor Bearable.
Yeah, before we move forward with this, I believe we need to do an independent time and motion study on this library to see exactly hour by hour, when patrons are coming in, when it's the busiest. I think you're way staffed. From my experience with working for 40 years in a business where you had to staff people, that you're not staffing it right, Nancy, at all, period. That's my personal opinion on this. And I think we need to, and I don't remember us ever doing a time and motion study on this, which was requested and asked way back. I've been here the whole time since that LGA cut, and we made those decisions to cut that staffing back so we could function. And I think that needs to be done before we hire anybody in that department. And I understand you have people, but still, 2 up, 2 down, that's 4 people. You still got 4 people left. You might have a vacation here and a vacation there. If you stagger your vacations right, based on the contracts, you don't have to let too many people go at one time, or if you get somebody sick, depending on what it is.
Only let a limited number of people go at a time.
I still want to see that schedule in writing, what you do and how you do it, and why that Saturday was never put into, and we did that after that LGA cut was made, that was put into motion, to open that library on Saturdays. Because we're getting a lot of complaints from the public that why it wasn't open for 4 hours on Saturday. We're not talking an 8-hour shift, we're talking a 4-hour shift on Saturdays.
Right, and part of that is because the union employees are guaranteed an 8-hour shift.
Well, there's where you go with it, with a memorandum of understanding. If you want a part-time employee, we'll do that. Look at a memorandum of understanding to change that. But we're not putting a full-time person in, from my perspective, in a position that's only for 4 hours on a Saturday. We're not going to have another one unless you stagger your shifts right. So that's my philosophy, and if the rest of the council wants to pass it, fine, but I'm not going to vote for it.
And I have one more question for you, if I may, Nancy. So you have your staffing there. Now, the fire department has minimum staffing levels, the police department has minimum staffing levels, and maybe Park and Rec has minimum staffing levels. You're going to let so many people go because you need X amount of staff at any given day to perform the functions, and staffing levels are set at a minimum. And time off is based upon that. And if there's exigent circumstances where somebody calls in sick, then people get called in. So do you have a minimum staffing levels at that library? And if you do, what are those minimum staffing levels on a daily basis?
To maintain the staffing, I only let 3 people off for, scheduled vacation because, there are emergencies or sick leave or whatever. So there's the maximum number of people that can be off on a particular day is 3.
So you have a minimum staffing level of 5 then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And what I was going to also mention about Saturdays is that means that because they get an 8-hour shift or whatever, 2 people would have to be off during the regular work week. And that was back when we had part-timers that would come in and cover breaks and cover lunch for the 2 full-timers. So that's how we did Saturdays before, with only 8 people, and that's including the maintenance person and myself, so 6 people. And then if you have 2 of them off during the main part of the week when we're actually busy, that would make it really difficult for the work, during the work week.
Okay, so the employees are coming 8 o'clock in the morning between 8 and 10 when the libraries are open. That's all prep time?
Yeah, that's when we do a lot of shelving, a lot of cataloging, that's when we have our meetings.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Brunzelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Britt, the 2 people were never replaced. Is it budgeted for those 2? Or is that
One part-time in next year's budget.
one part-time? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I think we really need to look at what the purpose of the library in the community, and this part-time position being a really small Band-Aid on a pretty big problem that obviously we need to discuss more. But I think that we need to at least do something right now to help fix the, again, it's probably the most utilized service in town. There are people waiting at the door at 10 a.m. and they're kicking people out at 6 p.m., literally saying it's time to go, the lights are off. At this point, I'll make a motion to authorize the hiring of a part-time person, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, the motion is to hire a part-time, permanent part-time,
Yes.
correct? Thank
As
you.
The request as made.
Yes, thank you. By Counselor Johnson, a motion to approve the hiring of a permanent part-time position for the library. Is there support? Is there support? Is there support? Hearing none. Counselor Beyondich, you have your light on. Okay, Counselor Beyondich supports, okay. Motion by Counselor Johnson and supported by Counselor Beyondich to move forward with the hiring of the permanent temporary position at the library, which is budgeted for 2020. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Mayor, I actually would feel more comfortable having a little bit more information regarding scheduling, not that I'm opposed to the hire, but just so we can maybe understand a little bit more about the structure and the desk positions and upstairs and downstairs. And I just have one other question that I wanted to ask. Are we using any type of scheduling software that can be tied into what we see here? Is there do you guys use a scheduling software? So it's just Excel. Is there some type of scheduling software that maybe we could look into? So
Then we might be able to do it with our current existing Casell software. So let me take a look at that. See if I can find
I
something.
just, I guess, to integrate what you're saying with union regulations, and I'm assuming there should be something available if you put criteria in there that a software could kind of spit out, here's how you need to do it. And I think it would be great if we could have that mirrored here, so that we could see that and then just understand, a little bit better about the dynamics. So if, I'm not opposed to the hiring, I think I just want to see a little bit better how, how everything functions there, so I can understand. It may be, for me, it may be more of a full-time position, I'm not sure. So I'd like to see how that works, if you don't mind.
Thank you. And I know in previous discussions with respect to hiring, I know we delayed the hiring of the Public Works. We created some significant issues there. We waited till August because there was some concerns about the budget and we didn't have the money for it. We're in the same boat we are now. So what's the difference between one position and the other? That's why I think you're asking for a justification for that, which I think is appropriate to do so. Thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess there is a count of how many books go through the media. That is all tracked, is it not, Nancy? Do we have a patron count currently? Has that been done this year yet? So that might be something that that would help with Councilor Baraboo's questions about usage and that kind of stuff. So we don't necessarily need to redo something. If you've already done it and you've got some tracking for the last couple of years, maybe that would be helpful to have also.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to, I think I recognize the need. I think I'm going to base my understanding of that on not only your proposal for the need, but primarily from our city administrator, and then, of course, the budget from our city finance director, too. But I, too, would like some more information about how this moves forward, the scheduling process, the work assignments from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock in the morning, every single day. Every single day. So if you have meetings and every single day, you have staffing the rooks and referencing things every single day. That's part of the daily routine that your library staff have. And then, so you can't be open to the public apparently and do that job at the same time. I guess I needed a clarification on that as well. So I'm moving forward anyway. Councilor Baraboo, did you have your light on?
Yes, I do have my light on.
Very good, thank you. I couldn't quite see it there.
Again, the studies of the number of patrons that go in there, Nancy, are they done hourly? Are they done split up? How are they done? They just done a total in the middle of the day? Or how is that count done? Is it kept track of by the hour when they come in, 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning?
It's kept track of hourly by the number of people who come in and what kind of services they need when they come in, hourly, Monday through Friday, or from whenever,
Yeah.
from the time we're open until the time we close. And it's a state library requirement that we do it like 5 times a year on particular sampling weeks, they're called, that are done by every library in the state on the same week.
Okay. The other question I have, when they do need, the patrons need help, is it done an accurate tracking is done how much time it actually takes an employee to help that patron? And I'm betting that is not done in that survey, how much time it actually takes. If you're sitting at a desk and directing them over here and pointing to there, that's a 2-second job. But if you're taking them and leading them there, that's different. Is that time taken in these surveys at all or not?
And that's why I said the thing is whether it's a reference question, which takes on average about 15 minutes, or whether it's a directional question, like where's the bathroom, that doesn't
so
take
you
as
do
much.
keep- so you do
But
keep
it's
track
still
of
some
time.
interaction that people, the staff has to have with the public.
Well, I understand the interaction. Like I said, I spent 40 years in the pharmacy business. I interacted 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day with patrons. So I understand the scheduling, believe me. And when a boss comes in and tells you need to do this, and you only have so much staff, you figure out a way to do it, to accommodate your bosses. That's what I'm getting at. And that wasn't done because the Saturdays were never opened during the time we told you that they were supposed to by motion for 4 hours. And nothing was ever done with that. And that's still a sore spot for me. I'm going to tell you that right now. And you had staffing that could accommodate that. And you can still have staffing. You stagger your lunches, I assume?
Yes, we do.
How do you stagger your lunches?
How do we stagger our lunches? We start taking lunches like at about, I go earlier, usually from 11 to 12. A couple of people go from 12 to 1, and some of them go from 1 to 2. And if they're working the night shift, sometimes they go from 2 to 3.
What do you consider a night shift?
Till 6.
Well, that's not a night shift. That's a
Well,
regular
that's how the
8 hour.
lunch
That's a
hours are
regular
staggered.
8 hour day. There's no such thing as a night shift till 6 o'clock, unless you have more than an 8 hour day there, and you don't. When you look at your schedule, everybody's working 7 hours basically with an hour lunch.
No, they're working 8
8
hours.
hours.
That's because
They're
the way
9
she.
hours.
That's because the way she schedules them. That's what I'm getting at. If you schedule people properly, you don't have to have all that stuff
I
done.
guess what are you proposing is to break up their.
I want to see her schedule first. I've done it, I did scheduling for 40 years as a pharmacy manager for 35 of those. And I had 7 to 10 people working for me over the different years. And we were open from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 or 9 at night. So that's a lot longer shift and I didn't have that many staff. I didn't have 8 people. I'm not going to argue with you. I want to see the scheduling.
No, I understand that, but on the behalf of Nancy here is a pharmacy, which is a one-floor situation, is a total different entity from the library. The library has many different rooms, okay, has many different floors, so you need people to be in these things, not only for safety, but also to be part of the patrons of the city of Virginia and outstanding areas, okay? So your entity of doing what you were doing is apples to oranges on what we're trying to do here.
It's not.
Okay, it is, because we have different floors and you have different rooms.
That's why you have
And what they
cameras,
did with
and that's why
13
you have-
people back in 2008, they're doing way more today with technology pertaining to computers, pertaining to disks, pertaining to doing taxes, pertaining to doing all this stuff. And what's happening here is they have 6 people, and then you have Nancy as the supervisor, and now they're taking the maintenance person, and they have to use him to cover the desks for lunch breaks, for vacations, for sick leave, and all this. And this is where it's also becoming a problem, is because the cleaning of the building and that is starting to suffer a little bit because of the lack of people there. I would like to see a full-time position there. Okay? That's the thing, is you got to remember, is you got to go in there and maybe observe this, because it's many different floors, many different functions that is going on here.
But with the technology basis, you don't need somebody babysitting a patron when they go into that building. You have, I'm assuming, You have stuff that goes off if somebody takes a gun into the place, okay? You have metal detector, or do you not have metal detectors? If you don't, we should. We need to look at things like that. You have cameras basically in these rooms where people are not actually with somebody. I'm assuming you have a bank of, which I don't know because I haven't been in there for a while, to look at different entities within the building. If not, we need to do that with the multiple floors. We need to use the technology that's available and spend some money doing it if we don't
They're
have.
kind of good after the fact, aren't they?
Well,
We don't have someone who can sit there and watch the camera constantly either, so.
no, I understand that, but they can be there. And you can roll them back if you need to, if you use
The
the right
patrons
technology.
that are using the library aren't necessarily there sometimes to utilize the library. They're there for other purposes, to
Well,
keep
yeah,
warm,
they're-
to
yeah.
get out of the weather and all that. So, we all know,
Then there
we
is
all know
an,
what's going on in the communities around
There's an
the Iron
issue
Range and
then, we-
everywhere. That safety
there's an issue
Safety is a
then.
huge issue, and if you have a camera, like Nancy says, once the act happens, it's too late. Once something disappears from the library, it's too late. For the amount of money that you're trying to save by not hiring an individual, you could lose in a heartbeat in another matter.
One individual, part-time, is not gonna solve that issue. If somebody wants to walk out of there with
Oh,
something.
but a full-time person and two
But-
casuals and a part-time would definitely help.
Here's the other thing. You have to understand, we have to be active. We've got all kinds of stuff going on in this community with drugs and everything. If the individuals that are in there aren't active and notify the police department, if you've got derelicts coming in there, or you have people that are homeless coming in there, you need to contact the police and ask them to come in, at least talk to them.
Library is available to everyone to use.
I
at any
understand that, but if you understand that somebody, and you know somebody is homeless, you need to have them make contact with somebody that can refer them to another places that we spend all kinds of money in this community on. So I don't buy some of this stuff, Nancy, or, excuse me, I don't know you, I haven't met you, I don't believe. Scott. And stuff. I just have a problem with thinking you can have to cover everything. You're not gonna cover it with another part-time person. And Scott is right. If we look at something, we probably need to look at full-time.
I will be glad to provide you with a variety, a bunch, a month's worth of schedules, and you can see how
All right.
how it goes.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Nancy, would you please just stay for one more moment? Okay, so for me, I recognize the need. I recognize the need, and based upon previous staffing levels, based on current staffing levels, hours of operation are a concern to me as well, but we're talking about the position itself here today. There's a motion in a second to move forward with hiring. I have some concerns about, the scheduling issues and those kind of things, and what is the definite need for the part-time, just to fill in for, those people are on vacation or on sick leave. So if a person is working, part-time is, permanent part-time is, how many hours are you going to be working? 7 hours a day?
It's 20 hours a week, so
So 20 hours a week, which really doesn't help you a lot, but it helps you some. And the other question for me is, before I want to support this moving forward, I support you needed the additional staff to help fill in. I mean, we're asking for temporary full-time, according to the ASME contract. It says you hire full-time first. I would be more comfortable to make sure that we have an agreement with the bargaining unit about hiring this person. We have something in writing that says, yeah, we're going to authorize this, because, I know, Scott, you're the representative. Yeah, I just want to make sure all your members also are supportive of moving forward with hiring this temporary, full-time, 20 hours a week, as opposed to what their contract really calls for technically, is to hire somebody full-time first to fill the position before you move to a part-time basis. So I'm looking for some clarification for that as well. I'm not opposed to the premise of hiring it, but I would like to, I think I'd like to just delay this a little bit longer until we get some assurances from the bargaining unit. And maybe between that time, you could provide some additional information that Councilor Bearaboo and Councilor Paulson is asking for. But there is a motion on the floor with support. Is there any further discussion? Let's go to Councilor Johnson first, and then we'll move on to Councilor Friedlieb and then Councilor Bearaboo. Councilor Johnson, thank you.
Actually, I believe Counselor,
Okay, Counselor Beyondich. Go ahead, Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. I just would be curious to know how many of us have actually gone to the library and sat there all day? Do we really know what goes on there? No. I go to their meetings, and let me tell you, they are busy. They have programs going on constantly. There are people there. I go to my meetings early. I have gone to the media center and learned about the audiobooks. I had no idea what all of that was. If you don't have somebody there to explain what the library has to offer, anybody can go and pick a book off the shelf. Technology is changing daily, and they are on the top of it. So that's why I do feel strongly, I come there, I see, I've learned what our city library does for the children, for our adults, for the homeless, whether they're supposed to be there or not. That is a safe place, and as long as they are not causing a problem in that public building, they have every right to be there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that this goes for the other positions too, that we delayed hiring, which is the Public Works position, because they're in the same boat. It's not just the library, because the library is a very emotional thing for people. You know, it's like a gathering place. It's a place of sanctuary and those kind of things. But when you delay the hiring of Public Works officials for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months, that has a significant impact on the service that we provide. So, you know, we have to be consistent in that regard. So when our staff makes a proposal moving forward, and it's already budgeted in the budget, we should carry forward and trust and faith in our staff that's going to be the case, and we can discuss it, which I think is important to do so. So I think that point that you make, you should be carried forward into the other positions that we're looking at as well. So thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Mayor, I agree with you. This is an emotional topic, and unfortunately, we have to look at it from that point of view, because you are the face of the city of Virginia. Nobody knows where City Hall is. They don't know where the police department is. They might know where the fire department is, but they definitely know, everybody knows where the library is, because you're there. I can't tell you how many people I say, you know, just come to a meeting at City Hall. Where's City Hall? But if I said I'm going to the library, that's fine. I don't think this should be delayed. We've been delaying hiring since I've been on the council. At one point, we had hired 2 more people to replace 2 retirements, but I really think we need to move forward with this Band-Aid. And then we do need to have some serious discussion about our library and what its value is to the community. There might be some different ways of scheduling. I ran group homes. I ran a child care center with mandatory minimum staffing, but you're right. You're absolutely right, Scott. It's every entity is a different beast. A library is different than a child care center, than a pharmacy, than a jewelry store or a flower shop. So we need to make sure that we're listening to the staff. So I would hope that we can come back to this soon and look at that staffing pattern. And for those of you who haven't been in the library in a while, go talk to your employees. Go visit and check in on them and see how they're doing. We have a lot of young folks there who are doing their best to meet the demands of the job and the demands of the behind-the-scene job, and trying to help each other and cover. But go there and sit in a chair and watch. I've been there during events when there's been 50 people sitting listening to a musician, and there's still people coming in and out upstairs and downstairs. It's absolutely amazing what happens there. So that's enough for now. I think I really encourage everybody to think about putting this off, and I'm concerned at some point if we don't start fixing the staffing problem, we're going to lose good staff and we're going to be in a bigger bind.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Freely, thank you for patiently waiting.
Yeah, no problem. Just really quickly, I served briefly as a liaison to the Library Commission early when I do want to compliment you on the data and the information that you provided during those meetings. I was impressed with the calendar of events that you afford the community through the library. Obviously, there's a lot of things that are happening there that require your administrative oversight. And I guess I'm of the mind that if it's already been preliminarily budgeted, then that kind of data and necessary information has been provided to Sherry in some regard or some form to have her already budgeted for that position, to have her budget for that position. So I'm just trying to ease my mind in terms of like where I stand on this issue, but it appears to me that the necessary data has been provided for us to move forward, since it's already been budgeted accordingly, to go ahead with what needs to be done on behalf of the personnel at the library. So that's where I stand at this point.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Freely. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think where I stand is I'm not opposed to the hire at all. I would like to see, I understand what you're saying, like, it's, Sherry's already got it budgeted for a part-time, but I also understand what Mayor Coffey is saying, and that might just be a Band-Aid. So I would like to look at that scheduling process and how kind of those moving part and people work, because in my opinion, if it full-time would be more appropriate, I think that's what the direction we should go instead of a part-time. But I'd like to see that so I can kind of get a better understanding. And you do serve an amazing, all of the staff there is doing an amazing job. And I think that, I have 5 kids. We've utilized the library throughout the years of kids, and the events that go on in the summer are fantastic. You do a great job. I'd like to get a little bit more information about Saturdays. And, maybe we incorporate that position, or maybe a full-time and a part-time or casual, whatever that looks like. I'd like to look at the whole, those numbers and those details, and try to maybe solve this together, instead of maybe just putting a part-time person in as in my opinion, of a Band-Aid, for just a float. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I guess I'd like to understand before I say yes to this, not that I'm opposed to it, I just would like to understand what really are those needs going forward.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, Scott, I don't mean to be upset with you at all as a representative. I agree with the mayor in one particular portion of this. Once we get the data, see the data, take a look at it, see what the schedule is, see what the issues are and where it is, I'm more leaning toward what the mayor's talking about. If we need the staff, I don't want to mess around with part-time. I want to go with your contract full-time first and then look at the part-time in the end. But I want to see that library open on Saturdays because it should have been for 10 years now, and it hasn't been. So that's where I'm going, but I'm not going to vote for anything until I see that data. Okay, just to clarify.
Okay, I guess one final comment from me. I just, I talk to a lot of people in the community, and I have coffee in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the early evening, and I visit with all kinds of people. We talk about all kinds of subjects. When the subject of the library comes up, number one issue that comes up with everybody, not is you have too many employees, is that you're not open on Saturday. For whatever reason, people in the community, whether that's the only time they can go there to read the paper or they go in there to check out a book in the morning, they like to come in there and do that. So that's the only the comments that I get about the library, other than the fact that, we're happy to have one, and we're fortunate to have a library that functions in the way it functions as far as providing the service and sanctuary and those kind of things. But for me, it's about making sure that we have an insurance from the bargaining unit, because we have a contract we have to honor. So by approving this permanent part-time position, and it's actually not technically in compliance with the contract, I want to make sure that we have assurances that it is in compliance with the contract, or we have some memorandum of understanding from the AFSCME union, from the bargaining unit that says, yes, we're okay with this. And so that's where I'm at. That's where I want to be. So with all due respect to the Councilor Johnson, Councilor Beyonders, who made the motion and seconded it, and moving forward, I'd like to see this delayed for a couple of weeks just a very short period of time until we can get that assurance from the bargaining unit, that we can work that out, and that we can, you'll provide some additional information. I don't think that's not going to determine my decision based upon what that is. So I just want to make sure that we have budgeted a part-time position only in here. And our budget doesn't provide for any new equipment. It doesn't provide for any additional full-time employees. That's what the budget is right now. That's where we set the levy at 5% based upon that budget. So if we make a change and hire full-time positions that are not budgeted for from the 2019 and 2020 budget, replacement personnel is an issue, right? So if where it's already budgeted for, and then the person retires, last year we delayed the hiring, even though it was in the budget. Now we're looking at hiring somebody that wanted to be full-time position that's not even in the budget. So the question is, permanent part-time is the position you're asking for. It's supported by staff, it's supported by you, it's supported by our administrator and our finance director, but I want to make sure that the bargaining unit contract is followed, and I know that that's an issue for us. Let's make sure we have an assurance from them to move forward. That's the only reason that I'd like to see this delayed for 2 weeks, and for that reason, I'm going to vote no today. But if we get assurances from the bargaining unit, I'll vote yes next time. So thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Scott?
On regard to that, Mayor, we have a union meeting tomorrow night, and I will definitely get back to you within 2 weeks. Get everybody together, we'll discuss it for sure, and then we'll come up with an agreement. We'll have that information for you.
I appreciate that, Scott, because I think we want to follow the bargaining unit contracts.
Appreciate that.
And we really do, and that's what we have a contract, we want to make sure we follow it. If we can get an addendum or memorandum or a collaborative between.
We can do an MOU if it comes down to that.
Okay, and we can do it as quickly as possible, so it's not delayed anymore, because apparently there's an identified need for that, right? So, thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Sam, could you read back my actual motion, please?
Moved by Counselor Johnson, supported by Counselor Beyondich, to approve the hire of the permanent part-time position.
Isn't part of that hire to get the memorandum of understanding? So if we start the process today of hiring, when we get that, we can continue moving forward instead of waiting 2 weeks to start the process?
But yes, that is correct. But I did also hear that there's also some other concerns that we may want to look at with the scheduling and with the other information. So maybe it's a simple modification to motion to begin the process to hire. So we will start gathering information, come back to the next committee of the whole with the schedule, the budget, all the information that's been asked for today.
I would amend my motion to.
Well, if it's
begin
beginning the
process.
hiring process, I'm in. If it's
Thank you.
hiring them, I'm not. So you're amending the motion, Counselor Johnson, to begin the process. And you're amending your second, Counselor Beyondich, for that same purpose. So read back the motion one more time, please. Thank you.
By Counselor Johnson, supported by Counselor Beyondich, to begin the hiring process for the permanent.
And we'll have to go to full council for approval anyway.
Correct,
So thank you. Is there any further discussion that's moved and supported with the amendment? Now, any further discussion? Counselor Bearable.
I just don't like the permanent part-time in that motion at all. Get rid of that, and I'm in, because we may look at, after we see all this data, we may look and start to figure out how we can go full-time in there instead of just permanent and part-time. So I want to just, I don't know how you do that, Steve, but just begin the process and we'll come out however we do it. And as I'm leaning, if we really need to, I'm leaning more toward additional, not the permanent part-time.
And like Scott said, we've had this discussion since May, and what we really, really need is one full-time, one part-time, and two casuals.
Yeah,
That's
so-
really what the staff, the library needs to be.
So
Nancy agrees.
that's
Yeah.
why I want to get rid of that one little,
So
The immediate need is a part-time. At this minute today, we could have this person start tomorrow and.
yeah, but that doesn't solve our long-range process.
No,
and
but it
that's
gives
what
us a
I'm-
step forward. And I'm not saying that we're done talking either. You know, we could keep moving on, and I'm sure that's what the MOU is going to say from the union, is that we would agree to a part-time today, but we want you to start talking about how are you going to fill this full-time position, because,
Worded as temporary part-time. Process, a temporary part-time isn't a full-time position.
and
We have done that in the past and then eventually roll it into a full-time.
that could morph into a full-time position. Okay, thank you. And so, Sherry, go ahead.
I just want to be careful because your contract states
Mm-hmm.
the temporary part-time, if it goes 67 shifts, it'll be considered full-time.
And that's a good point, Sherry. That's why I want to make sure we get an insurance from the bargaining unit that we have an agreement moving forward. So Counselor Johnson's motion is amended, whether it's permanent or part-time. I guess we're starting the hiring process, and we can always change it, whether it's permanent, part-time to a permanent if we want to. We're starting a hiring process. Is the hiring process in that motion only for the permanent part-time position? Is that what the motion says?
Does it need to be exclusive, or can we just start the hiring process for a library position?
I think that would be appropriate motion.
Would you amend that once more, Pam, please?
So we're coming to a consensus
We need a
here.
body at the library.
We're coming to a
That's what we're
consensus
trying
here.
to get to.
Nancy and Scott, would you be okay with wording like that? Just, okay.
Okay, so the wording is, please,
Position at the library.
and you're amending that, and you're amending your support as well, Counselor Beyondich? Okay, we got there. It took a little while, but we did get there. So, any further discussion? Counselor Paulson?
Sorry, I had my light on.
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing that second amendment because I really feel like we might be looking more toward a full-time position. But I'd like to see all that what we requested. But I really thank you so much for coming and having this discussion with us and making us a little bit more aware of the needs that the library has. So I'd like to look at that. I'm sure Counselor Baraboo feels the same way. Yeah, okay, and I'm done. Thank you.
And so just so we're clear, moving forward, this motion may require an adjustment to the 2020 budget because it's not budgeted in there for those positions, right? Okay, thank you. Just make where we'll have to, may have to have those discussions as well. Thank you very much, everybody. Good discussion. It was moved and supported to begin the hiring process for a library position, library clerk position, or library position, right?
Just leave it library because they all have different titles. So
Okay, a
depending on-
library position. So the motion is to move forward with begin the process to hire a library position. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is to discuss the renewal of the following contracts, and the first one is professional services for the lobbyist, which expires, I believe, Pam, September 30th? Is that the date?
And I think I can start this process moving forward. Of course, we've had Ron Jarrett and Associates the last couple of years. We do have a bonding session coming up. Two major projects in the works. The Miners Memorial Building project was still in the legislative compact, even though we've got some approval for that with the sales tax coming to fruition beginning January 2020. The new public safety building, which we're asking for $10.39 million from the legislature, moving forward with that. I think his and his staff has done some yeoman's work, some good work for us. I think it's worth the money that we're paying him for at least one more year, at least in the bonding session, to help carry forward some of these the issues that we have, particularly the public safety building, because I really believe that when we vetted this out before, that the services that he provided was beneficial. Although we wouldn't have the money from the miners, we wouldn't have that $5.4 million, even though we're not getting it till 2029, because that was dead in the water until he resurrected it through Melissa Hartman and Representative Livelsgard and those kind of things, and all his lobbying efforts on both sides of the aisle to get that moved over there. So that's an accomplishment. So there has been a lot of accomplishments that he's made. So the question is do we want to continue with the professional services for Jarrett and Associates for the lobby firm, or do we want to go it alone? It'll be my. I'm supporting renewing the contract for one more year, and the reason you have to renew it soon is because he has required by law to register as our lobbyist for the 2020 legislative session. So that being said, does anybody have anything they'd like to offer or have any questions or concerns? Councilor Johnson.
I believe there's a third option to look at hiring a lobbyist who specializes in public safety and public safety centers. When I was down at the Capitol building, Chief Lewis introduced me to several different lobbyists who specialize in public safety. And I think that because we decided this spring that our only priority this year at the state would be the Public Safety Center and attaining money for that. I would like to see us move towards a person who has specific knowledge about public safety, about ambulance service, about fire service, and I think that we need to seriously consider a very specific person that's all they're gonna do down there for us. I don't disagree with you that we have a minors moving forward and there's money there, but we made it very clear whenever that meeting where we discussed the only priority was public safety, and I think our lobbyists should reflect that.
Thank you. And I'll just say, with all due respect, I disagree that we hire someone specifically for that, because there are other lobbying issues coming up. There's trail money issues that come up, and maybe it's not a priority, but we have other issues in the hopper. Even though this is our number one priority for bonding, there are other bonding issues that we have moving forward. And by hiring one specific lobbyist to work on one specific bonding request, and of course, the current lobbyist that we have has intricate negotiations, intricate relationships with people on both sides of the aisle, including those that are the public safety chair in both the House and the Republican side. So if we want to look at a specific lobbyist, we can do that. But I think we should continue with the service that we have, because he provides a broad range of services, and public safety is just one of those things, because he is a lobbyist for another entity who builds these public safety buildings all over the United States, particularly all over Minnesota. And one of them is working on a monitors project as well. So I think that we shouldn't, I mean, I agree that, we need somebody in expertise, but I think he has that. I think he has the relationships with the legislature for that. He knows those individuals that are lobbying on their behalf. He knows the right people. He's been in lobbyists for 35 or 40 years. I know we looked at this, and we vetted a lot of lobbyists. We suggested that this would be the individuals that we do move forward. So I would be, I would support moving forward with a 1 more year contract with our current lobbying firm. That's my opinion. So anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Councilor Baraboo?
Yeah, Mayor, I happen to agree with you based on the fact that we have a lobbyist that Rams hires also, and they're intricate with Mr. Jarek and his firm also, the lobbyist for Rams, who happens to be Gary Sukvinick, and they work back and forth, these lobbyists. They don't just do the one thing, they help each other down there if it has to do with the region, and I know they have helped each other on these projects that come up here. When you have more than one lobbyist in an area of a region, they help each other. So I would, right now, changing in midstream is hard because Mr. Jarek and his firm has all the background data and information that's needed to move this stuff forward. So I would support continuing with Mr. Jarek.
And it's a 1 year contract for the same amount of money, no increase in the last couple of years. This would be the same contract fee, which is lower than most other lobbyists that we have, but that's just kind of my philosophy moving forward. So does anybody have anything else that they'd like to discuss about the professional service for lobbyists? Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just searching through my email. Do we get updates from Ron Jarek at all? I'm looking and I didn't see anything in my email.
Well, we get all the time, but
You do, but we don't?
he's welcome. Well, he said
Wait
he'll
a
come
minute,
up.
wait, just a second. You get updates, but the rest of the council doesn't?
Well, I go down there to the legislature. I meet
But
with
is
him and
his
others.
firm sending us as a
No,
body
no. If he was,
information?
we would all be getting it. No. I go down there on a regular basis to all the fundraisers. I go down to all the conferences. I meet with the legislators and the staff, with the lobbyists present, wherever it's at.
Right, that wasn't my question.
Okay, the answer to your question is no.
Thank you.
And if you want him to come up, they're willing to come up anytime we ask.
I'm not necessarily asking to come up. I'm asking for updates so we can be kept abreast of what the information is that he's conducting. Like Rams gives updates constantly. So I feel like I'm not given enough information by him or his firm. I'm not negating that you get the information or that you you know, you have a great relationship or connection with him, and he's doing a great job. I don't mean to negate that. I just feel like I have not been given any information, and so for me, I don't know that I'm comfortable voting yes when I'm not ever given any updates or information on what he's working on, or, you know, even if it's a quarterly report or an update. And I actually wouldn't be opposed to going out for an RFP, or if we are looking at, you know, focusing on public safety, you know, I don't know if we've talked to John Arrett regarding that, you know, if they used anyone in the South Metro for that merging of the fire departments down there. But if that's our focus this year, is this an annual contract that we do with?
Once a year.
Once a year?
An annual contract.
So, I mean,
correct.
I wouldn't be opposed to putting it out there if we really want to kind of laser focus on our, you know, what's on the legislature, this funding, this, you know, go around. But, you know, it is a little frustrating for me that I don't have any, I just was scrolling through my email, and I have absolutely nothing in my email from him or his firm.
I think that we could ask, they'll be more than happy to provide updates for you. In fact, they've even offered to come up at any time we want to provide us an update, just to, you know, to meet and confer. I think there's the three in the firm that does that. So if that's something you'd like to have, we can certainly do that, Councillor Paulson. Thank you. Councillor Baraboo.
Yeah, the only thing, Juliana, about switching right now, we already sent down our priority for the year, and Mr. Jarek has been involved with that because we had to do that by a certain date in order to make Chairperson Mary Murphy's list to get on the bonding for next year. If we didn't send that information down, we wouldn't even be on it for this year. And they had their bonding tour here last week, and I attended because the mayor was unavailable, so I was there and shook all the hands of everybody and talked to all those people, of the 20-some that were there. And Mr. Jarek has been involved with this update that we sent down already, so it's hard to switch in midstream, and I think and I don't remember the date, but it's awful quick here when they have to sign up as a lobbyist. Do you know when it is, Brett?
It's pretty close. Like
It's close,
We could find that date out for you, everybody.
I think it's in October, but when they have to sign up, and it's getting short to go out for RFPs and do stuff for this year. I have no problem if we take a look on our stuff for next year, but I think we're getting awful close on. So I remember us talking about at Rams that we had to have the authorization to hire and to so they can get on the lobbying list, and that's a state law requirement. That they have to do, but I don't remember the date. I have to be honest with you. I don't remember the date.
We could find out, and I think Councilor Paul should make a good point. We should have some periodic updates of, you know, what they're working on, things of that nature. Certainly can provide that without any problem. I suppose we were remiss in not asking for that, requesting that information. I guess I got all tied up in, you know, being down there so often that. You know, maybe we should be have proviso in there, but I'm sure they'd be willing to do that. Councilor Paulson?
Mayor, I don't feel like our council has been remiss in
No, I have been.
asking for that information. I think that if we're paying him that amount a month, that information should be provided, period.
That's no problem. We can do that.
Yeah.
We can't do what happened in the past. We can certainly do that in the
No,
future.
and
here.
so my next point with Councilor Baraboo, I mean, I understand there's a time, you know, constraint. My question would be, why is it just coming before us now at the 11th hour? I mean, did we originate his contract in late September last year? So if this is always a deadline, why don't we do it sooner, or why wasn't it brought forward sooner, would be another part of my concern. And if we really are focusing on the public safety building, and Mary Murphy is really the heart of where we need to get to with her, I guess, winning her over, you know. So, and I'm not saying that Ron can't do that. I'm not saying that. But I would like to explore if there are such people, as Councilor Johnson has suggested, if there are such lobbyists out there specifically for public safety that would be able to lobby in that direction a little bit more clearer than Jarek and Associates, I would be open to looking at that. And that's just where I'm coming from. I don't like being put into the position that we're in the 11th hour and this is what it is. So I would suggest next year, as we go forward through this process, that we take a look at that in the summer. But I wouldn't be opposed to, to looking at an entity or a firm that specializes in lobbying for public safety.
I think to add some clarity to your request, I think it was behoove Jarek and Associates to give updates with respect to that. He is heavily involved in public safety structures. He's lobbied for these in the past. So you need to know, we all need to know, well, of course I do, but you all need to know, that this, if we're focused on public safety and you just focus on that particular aspect of it and not the other parts and the relationships that others have, that we've had with this particular firm, I can understand that. I think we do need have some updates with respect to that. But I'm looking for other information, other things moving forward. We have this on the table, so this is, are we going to look at additional professional services? Are we going to support one more year with Jarek and Associates, or are we going to do this on our own? I suppose that's all a decision that we're discussing here today. But I'm going to tell you, from my perspective, with all due respect, I'm not voting for anything else other than Jarek and Associates for this one more year, because there are a lot of irons in the fire still. And if we need updates, we'll call them up here and let them speak. We can ask any question you want from their firm, and then continue to move forward, providing whatever information that you feel that we need to have, or you need to have, and make an informed decision. Councilor Barnzelli.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we hire Mr. Jarek and Associates for another year. Thank you.
I would support that.
Okay, moved and supported by, moved by Councilor Barnzelli to hire Jarek and Associates for one more year, effective September 30th, 2019. It's supported by Councilor Friedlieb. Further discussion, Councilor Friedlieb.
I would ask that the council be provided periodic updates and information in a newsletter type form or some kind of form that we would be updated accordingly on efforts that are being made and the progress being made towards those.
And would that include them coming up and giving a presentation as well?
If necessary, and/or through email.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Johnson.
So I'm on cfb.min.gov, which is the lobbyist registration site. And I've got several tabs open here about lobbyist registration. The only deadline for lobbyist registration is 5 days after the first contact, or something, similar wording. It says if you are paid to represent someone to influence the legislative process, to influence the decision of metropolitan government units, state agency rulemaking, or certain decisions of Public Utilities Commission, you may need to register with the board. To register, fill out the form, transfer it board, mail, fax, email. Next lobbyist report due is January 15, 2020. Under when to register, it says 5 days. So I don't know where the October deadline comes from, and I would be interested to have that information. So I don't know that we're under the gun, other than the contract is running out. And if my memory serves me correct, the last time we asked Jarek, we hired them under contract, we specifically said we wanted regular updates. And as Councilor Paulson said, they haven't come. When we were doing all of the miners projects, I seem to remember getting forwards from the administration that were coming from the League of Minnesota cities as to updates on the process of where the money was coming from for the Miners Memorial, not Jarek and Associates. So I still feel very strongly that if we're doing a public safety center, we should have someone who specializes in that, and that's how I will be moving forward with this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Johnson. I don't think there's anybody said that there's an October deadline. I think that's when we started, I think that's when we first hired him, was on the 30th of September on a annual basis. I think that's what the case may be. He has to register as a lobbyist for us, whenever the requirements are. So whoever that we hire as lobbyists will have to follow those rules. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I just recall at the beginning of this conversation, we were just told that there was a deadline. Were we not? So where did that information come from?
Not from me. I don't know.
I mentioned that, Mayor, that there's a deadline, but I think Counselor Johnson's 5 days after you hire, they've got to register. Once you've hired them, you gotta register quickly. That's part of it, because you can start any time then, and even in the off season when the legislature isn't meeting, they're lobbying with individuals. So I believe that's where that 5 days comes in, Steve, from what I recall. And we did hire Mr. Zergvenik through Rams, and it had to do with the contract date when his contract was up, and then he has to file his paperwork within that timeframe once you hire the individual.
Yeah, and when we look at these
So
things.
I'd like to continue.
I'm sorry,
if I
please
may.
continue. Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm not comfortable. I mean, this is $36,000 from our budget for a lobbyist that we, as a council body, have not received one report, that I have not received one email from this body, this company. And I'm just not comfortable with that. I'm sorry, but I'm not. I think if we are going to if we're going to hire someone, they need to be communicating to us. And we have asked for that communication, and that communication has not come forward. And I don't like to feel like because a contract is expiring that we need to rush into signing the person up just because that's the person we've been working with. I feel that it's our duty to explore options, and I don't believe that we are in any type of a time crunch. If we're looking at our public safety building as our number one priority, which we have stated as a council body, I truly feel that it would be in the city's best interest for us to look into a lobbyist specifically for those reasons. And I feel like the League of Minnesota Cities, and including Rams, is going to continue to do the other lobbying that they've been working on from the beginning. So I just feel like, is there a duplicate of services here? Possibly, but I've not been given any information as to what this firm is doing. So it's hard for me to assess, is there duplication of services? And $36,000 is a lot of money. That could pay the other half of a half-time or part-time employee at the library. So I'd like to see how we're utilizing these resources and what we're getting for $36,000.
Okay, if I may just clarify. The couple of things that you said, Councilor Paulson. First is that, you have the League of Minnesota Cities and Rams working on regional projects.
That's right.
Not individual projects for the city of Virginia, regional projects. We have a lobbyist to lobby for our projects. That's the issue. The issue is for our projects. And so it doesn't make any difference if you hire a public safety person that specializes only in public safety buildings. You think that person is only going to be lobbying for us? No, they're going to be lobbying for all the other fire EMS systems that are throughout the state of Minnesota. We need somebody that's going to lobby for ours and ours only. Okay, that's the way I look at things. And so, yes, we should be getting updates. That can be provided, not an issue. And if we're not on the time comes to hire anybody, there's a motion on the floor in a second to hire Jarrett & Associates for one more year. So we can vote that down if you want, or vote it up, or whatever you want, and then move on for some other motion if you like. But from my personal perspective, I think this is a prudent thing to do. I mean, if you want more periodic updates and information, let's have him come up and do it. Let have him provide it. Let's mandate that he does that. That they can do that. It's not an issue. But to make the decision on making and changing things for one position or another, for a regional lobbyist as opposed to an individual lobbyist. That's why you hire a lobbyist in the first place, for that purpose. That's just kind of the way I look at things. If you need more information, we could get that provided. And when down at the legislature, I can tell you, I've been down there many, many times and talked to a lot of people, a lot of lobbyists, and those that are the head of the EMS, that Chief Lewis knows very well, works very close with the lobbyists that we have right now, which is a good thing moving forward. So they have these personal contacts. I don't see the need to hire one individual specifically for one project. When you hire lobbyists, they lobby for you, and you only, not for a regional. I mean, there are regional issues that we have with the League of Minnesota Cities. There are regional issues we have with respect to RAMS, but we want somebody that's going to hire the project for us specifically. So the motion on the floor is this. Motion by Councilor Barnzelli and seconded by Councilor Friedlieb to hire Ron Jarek and Associates for one more year, beginning September 30th, 2019. And before we move forward with the vote, is there any further discussion? Councilor Baraboo.
Yeah. One thing that members of this council need to understand, lobbyists hire out to more than one entity, not just one city or one township or one school district. They hire out to many different entities. As an example, the RAMS lobbyist hires out to Mountain Iron, to Virginia, to our public utilities. They have, and Jarek and Associates are no different, because they can't live on $36,000 a year, so they're hiring out different places. All these lobbyists do this. It's not that they have one single entity that they're working on, but when you establish yourself with the representatives down there, and with the chairs, and with the different heads of your state house and state senate, you have an establishment with them where they will let you come in and talk to them. And the longer you're there, the better opportunity that you have to talk to them. We have been able to set up, because of a lobbyist, direct communications through RAMS with the governor's office on issues with mining. Okay, that's separate from our city stuff. But that's because of the lobbyist that's up here, Mr. Sirkvenik, has got these, how do you want to say it, connections. And that's so important down there. If you don't have that connection, you don't get to see him. You can go down there and he can walk into any legislative office from representatives up here that deal with the issues up here and get an appointment. And if you don't know these people, you can't get the appointments. That's the bottom line. Larry can get in because of these lobbyists, because they will set up an appointment ahead of time.
Well, any of us could.
Yeah, any of us that are here on this. And we send down our director from RAMS and other things with help from the lobbyists to get in to be seen. So it's important that, from my philosophy, that we hang on at least now and then go out and start looking. I don't disagree we should look, Julianne. But at this point in time, I would like to see us just hang on one more year and get these reports, get them up here, have them report. We got plenty of time to do this before the first of the year, to get him up here and get some reports done from Jarek and Associates.
And just one clarification regarding the lobbyists. You know, when you work at a specific project, yes, they're not going to live on $36,000 a year, but he'll lobby for Reynolds Company, he'll lobby for Cross Anderson, lobby for this, but it's only for one entity. So say, for example, he's lobbying for our public safety building. He's not lobbying for a public safety building for somebody else. He's only lobbying for our public safety building. And some of these other public safety, when they only consult public safety, they're not just representing you. They're representing all different kinds of public safety all over. Because if they, like you said, if they concentrate on one entity, they can't live on one monthly salary. So that's the kind of the way I look at things. I really do strongly believe that that firm has been effective for us and can continue to be effective moving forward, regardless of the issue, particularly with the longevity and all those other kind of things. But I think the important thing that Councilor Parsons brings up, which I think is important, that we need to get periodic updates of what's going on. I think they'll provide it. All we got to do is ask them to do so, and they will. And so I don't recall that ever happening before, where we're supposed to get the periodic, but if it was, we want to make sure that that continues to be done. So that's kind of where I'm at. So we've been moved and supported to move forward with hiring Ron Jarek and Associates for one more year, beginning September 30th. 2019, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Roll call, please.
Paulson?
No.
Beyondich? Johnson? No. Kelly? Yes. Duffy?
Aye.
Baraboo?
Aye.
So motion fails 4-2 because it's a money issue. Okay, thank you. Okay, Counselor Johnson.
I would make a motion to direct staff to investigate other possible entities and bring all of them back, including a proposal from Ron Jarek for discussion to represent us in reference to the Public Safety Center.
Okay, moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support? Is there support?
No support.
Support by Counselor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? I don't think it's prudent for Ron Jarek to come back up here and reapply for this position. If you're only asking for a specific public safety position, like you indicated, Counselor Johnson, he would be out. So, okay, so it's moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by, okay, Counselor Baraboo.
Yeah, I think it's also inappropriate to request that individuals we've already hired for this purpose over the last year, that they be brought back in. I don't think that's proper to do, so I'm not going to support that motion. I'd support it without that in there. But I think this individual council is going to kick themselves in the tail end when this is done and find out how important connections are with people that are longevity down at the state capitol. Talk to any of your legislative people that you deal with and actually specifically talk to them about the importance of the lobbyists down there and the establishment. And you'll find out that changing and doing things in midstream when they've already been working on a project is not the proper thing to do for getting things accomplished. So I'm not going to vote for this.
Yeah, I won't either because I voted for the first one. So, Counselor Johnson.
So, Councilor Baraboo, could you clarify, does that mean that other lobbyists do not have those connections? I'm really feeling that you're implying that Ron Jarek is let me finish my question, please, sir. Ron Jarek is the only lobbyist that can work for Virginia because he's the only one that has the connections for us. I'm confused about that because there are thousands of lobbyists registered in the state of Minnesota. And I do not see how us asking a specific lobbyist to do something for us is going to change. No, as Councilor Paulson said, we have zero reports anywhere in our emails of what Ron Jarek has done for our Public Safety Center. There is nothing in anything that I can find that says, Ron Jarek talked to this person about this. He talked about this person about this. And if he has that information, then he should present that to us as we're looking at other lobbyists. And if he has made these connections and there's progress and he can demonstrate, or his firm can demonstrate that, I'm all for keeping him on board. But right now, there is nothing to indicate that he, in writing, in our emails, that he has done anything for the city of Virginia when it comes to the Public Safety Center. Part of the reason I'm sitting here is because sometimes people don't want to keep doing things the way they've always been done. And so my job is to make sure that I'm fine with that as long as we're doing it with purpose. If he truly is the best person for the job and can demonstrate that with some notes or something from the last 5 years, 8 years, how long has he been working for us?
3.
3? Then I'd like to see that when he comes to the Public Safety Center. Otherwise, I have no problem starting fresh because all those lobbyists still have the same connections. They still know the same people. They can still get in to see the governor. They can do all of that stuff as well. everybody down there, I am very aware of how the lobbyist system works down there. Very aware. So I think that if we're going to move forward with the lobbyist, we should give everybody a shot. And if they don't want to apply because they can't do that, to me, that says something about the services they're providing to us already.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Johnson. It's been moved in support.
I'm going to have a rebuttal.
yes,
I'm going to have a
please.
rebuttal to
Yeah,
this.
Counselor Bearable.
Steve, number one, Jarek and Associates has all the background information, what we've been trying to do. None of the other lobbyists will have that. They have to start over from square one, okay? That's one of the most important things, because you have to carry things from year to year to year before a lot of times anything gets done in the process of bonding down there. We've had that experience ourselves here in Virginia, Minnesota, where it doesn't get any place until year 3 down the road. Miners is an example of that. But you can have these reports. We just got to ask. We get a report at RAMS at least once every other month from Mr. Cervenik in a written form. So you just got to ask for it, and they bring it to you. But the connections are important, and I don't care what you say. They don't all have the connections, because there's new lobbyists that head into the state capitol every single year down there. They're not all there for a lifetime or 30 years or 20 years, but Jarek's been there a long time, just like a couple others that I know down there have been there a long time, but there's others that are fresh out of the gate. So I don't want to see somebody have to start over with all the information and then bring the background and then try to get in where the other lobbyist already has the connection with the important people on this particular project of public safety. The other ones may not even, they may know them, but they haven't presented that project to them, and Jarek and Associates have already. So they've got an in already. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Johnson?
So in the resolution from September 11, 2018, point 6, under the first whereas, says report to the City of Virginia and City Administrator. That is pretty clear to me that we should be getting updates. We are the City of Virginia in this room. We are the councilors elected by the people. We have asked in writing for those reports.
Read that again.
Whereas Jarek and Associates will provide services in respect to the legislative matters in the state of Minnesota as requested by, directed by the City of Virginia, advise and counsel, represent the city before appropriate legislators and the legislative executive bodies, monitor legislative activities with potential impact on the city, maintain the strictest confidence of all information disclosed to us by the City of Virginia, comply with the laws applicable and to lobbying, and register with the report, Minnesota Campaign Finance Board, report to the City of Virginia and the City Administrator.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson. Anything further?
I just wanted to point out that 6 of us on this, of the City of Virginia do not receive reports.
Well, that probably has to change, don't you think?
Well, it was in the contract last year, and so to me, they're in violation of their contract.
Counselor Freely.
Anybody administratively or on the council enlighten me to what kinds of successes the city has had with Jarek and Associates being our lobbyist? What kinds of things have been provided to us, or what kind of projects came to fruition? Or
Well, I know that Counselor Paulson has a smile on her face that she's frustrated by the fact that she doesn't have any idea what they've done. And I concur that needed some updates with respect to that, but let me fill you in. They did, if it wasn't for, I believe, their lobbying efforts, we're not saying that somebody else couldn't do it, but if it wasn't for their lobbying efforts, we would have never got the $12 million for the miners project, because it was denied 3 times in the legislature, 3 times in the bonding. And we got nowhere with it. We got absolutely nowhere with it. And if his lobbying efforts in the last hours of the legislative session between him, Tom Bach, Kurt Daudt, both on the Republican and the Democratic side, were the ones who got that passed with his lobbying efforts to get that $12 million, number one. Number two, that $5.4 million would have been dead in the water, because it was supposed to be in the transportation bill. It got tossed. It was supposed to be in the bonding bill, but it couldn't be because the money had already been spent. So in the committee, it was said, no, we're not going to fund it. He lobbied senators, there's quite a few of them, along with Representative Lizgard and Melissa Hortman, who's the speaker. They got that money transferred over to the LGA for a one-time payment for us for $5.4 million to be payable in 2021. That had been in the law. Those are the two major things. And he's lobbied for us on our sales tax moving forward. With Senator Tomassoni, himself, Jeremy Miller, Senator Durant, there's a whole bunch of them on the Senate side that lobbied in order to get that sales tax approved. So I think those are some of the three major stuff he's done. He's also been working behind the scenes on some money for some more trail grants for us individually, along with, Rams is working on the trail through Sir Vanek and the trail committee and those kind of things. So anything specifically that we want him to work on, he works exclusively for us. So if it's an issue that we have, he won't work, he's not going to represent another city or another entity for that. He lobbies for us and us alone. That's been his mantra. I'm not saying that others won't do that, but that's been his mantra.
I guess I posed that question in part so that we could hear that there are things that have been successful on behalf of the city by way of Jarek and Associates. And knowing as little as I do about the lobbying process, I think the consistency of communications is pretty critical to have those kinds of networks availed to you and to have that kind of consistency of communication to allow you to move forward on those kinds of things. You just mentioned nearly $20 million that have been afforded to us as a city through Jarek and Associates over the last 3 years. So that's why I'm in favor of what I suggested, renewing that contract and then impressing even further upon them that we need some periodic updates in regard to the progress being made that would comfort us in regard to what we're getting what kind of bang we're getting for our buck. But obviously, we are getting bang for our buck when we get $12 million for the miners and we get 5.4 for the bridge and so on and so forth. So there are successes that they brought to us from the city, over the last 3 years through this contract without having updated us accordingly, but hopefully in the next year, they would be able to do so. So that's why I was moving in the direction that we were. I think it's important to have voices there that are consistent and are networked accordingly on behalf of the city of Virginia. And obviously, Jarek and Associates has been successful at doing that for us for the last 3 years, despite not having kept us up to date with regard to those progress.
Thank you. And that is the angst that we have and the frustration on the part of some of the counselors. Maybe all of us said we need to have those updates, and I think that we can mandate that be done and ensure that it gets done. So, thank you. It's been moved by Councilor Johnson and supported by Councilor Paulson to what? What was it? I'm sorry. Please repeat the motion.
That is my question. What
is your motion, Councilor Johnson?
To direct staff to look at an RFP for a lobbyist specifically for the Public Safety Center.
Okay, so would that include?
Including Ron Jarek would be more than welcome to present the information supporting $20 million that, if I'm at the point where I need to be proven that he's done something. There are a lot of people working hard down there. I went down there and I talked to people. So, it's really hard to pay somebody without any documentation of success.
Okay, so so the motion is to hire a lobbyist specifically
No, excuse me,
only
Mayor.
for the public safety building. That was your motion, is
No,
that
my
correct?
motion is to direct staff to create an RFP for a lobbyist, not to hire, an RFP for a lobbyist for the Public Safety Center.
Only for the public safety center, correct?
Yes,
Only
and
for
I
the
will
public
point
safety
out
center.
that the
Is there
contract we
support?
had with Jarek was only for the miners. The one that was in our packet specifically states Miners Memorial Building. So I just want to make sure that that's clear too. It wasn't just to be a general lobbyist for the city of Virginia. It was to,
The bonding. It was bonding.
or the capital bonding project for the Miners Memorial Building. So I just want to make sure that's clear that while we hired him to do one thing, he may have done other things, and that's my concern, is that if the Public Safety Center is our priority this year in this bonding session that we said, then that's what I, as a counselor, want him working on, because Without that public safety center, our fire department's going to literally fall into the ground, and we should have some clear vision moving forward. So my motion is about public safety center specifically.
Okay, so this, and you're seconding that motion, Counselor Paulson, for the Public Safety Center, lobbyist for Public Safety Center? Okay, for nothing else, but just the Public Safety Center, is that correct? Okay, and is moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson?
I just want to thank Counselor Johnson for that clarification that Jerk and Associates, what date was that? So a year ago was hired specifically in that contract for the miners project. So it's no different than what your motion is today for a specific project. Thank you.
Counselor Bearable?
Yeah, what people don't understand is that a lobbyist that's working for you doesn't just work on a specific item. That's their main thing when we hire them, but they'll work on other issues that may be affecting the city also, because they want to continue their lobbying with the city in the future. One of the most important things, and if you're going to go out and look for RFPs, you're going to have to ask this question. Mr. Jones, if you're going to lobby for the city of Virginia, what's your connections with the delegation of Greater Northern Minnesota, with our delegation of 8 to 10 people up here on the Iron Range? Do you know them personally? Do you work with them? Have you worked with them directly on projects? Because if they haven't, you're going to have a hard time getting stuff through at the legislature. The people who have already worked with them and have established communications, they get our delegation to work on behalf of what we're doing up here. It's going to be tough if you don't know them to do. And that's not just here, it's all over the state. You have to know your individuals, and lobbyists will do whatever they can to help an area. We've got personal experience with that, and we can bring up specifics if you want through what RAMS has done on a regional basis for other communities besides Virginia, besides Mountain Iron, besides, that's a 7-county organization that covers 7 counties, and lobbyists for RAMS helps out all over the area, but he knows the people. It's very, very important that you know the individuals when you get down there. So that's a question I would ask any lobbyist if you go out for RFPs. I still can't vote for changing this year. I can see it for a year coming up, but not this year. It's too important because we've already designated our stuff to the legislature as far as what our priority is.
And I'll just say one more thing before we vote. He's already working on the public safety building, you know, so it's not just specifically for one project, even though the 2018 says that's what we permanently hired him for. So anyway, there's been enough discussion about that. So we have Counselor Paulson.
You, with all due respect to both of you, I understand that a lobbyist that any city would hire would obviously be working on other projects. So it's a little irritating to me that you are insinuating that we don't understand that, to be very honest with you.
I didn't say that. I did not say that, so
Well, maybe
include
the
one
tone-
counselor.
maybe the to-
Include one counselor in that statement, don't
I
include
would
me in
say
that
the
statement.
tone of the conversation is, if we don't go to this individual, we are making a grave mistake because we don't know. And my response to that is, maybe we don't know because this firm has never communicated with this body. So I will not support hiring of anyone who doesn't come back with information. That's a real bother to me, and I don't feel that it's a good use of taxpayer dollars. You know, I do know a little bit about other people that signed on to those different bills. I know them personally, and that's all I'm going to say. There are other people working on behalf of the projects that we've put forward in the past. So I don't, the way I was just made to feel, maybe it is inaccurate for me to state that, but I'm sorry. I understand that a lobbyist is going to work on a gamut of projects. What I was trying to point out, what Counselor Johnson said, is last year in September of 2018, we specifically hired Jarek and Associates for a specific project. Doesn't mean that he can't work on other projects. We all understand that he has worked on other projects. But we have not had any communication. So that is my frustration. You're saying, well, we can go forward and get that information. Well, last year we requested that. We have not received that. So I would like to go forward with someone new.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Paulson. How can I be tactful here in response to you? I think all of us here today are interested in doing the best job for the city. We are making a vote based on our individual decisions on what we think is the right thing to do. So I respect everybody's opinion here and what they say and the passion that they have about this. But our goal and objective as an elected body is to make sure that we come to a consensus, that we treat each other with respect and dignity, that we respect what everybody says to one another. We all have our opinions. We may disagree with the opinions, but we all have those opinions. So we'll vote the way we vote, and we move forward with the next topic of discussion. But here today, we're here to do what's in the best interest of all of us, and so that's what we're trying to do. So now, there's a motion on the floor, and please read that back one more time. A motion by Councilor Johnson, supported by Councilor Paulson.
Request staff to advertise for RFPs for a lobbyist specific to the public safety building.
Thank you. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion?
That wasn't what I understood that motion was.
Was that your motion? That is the motion.
No, it wasn't for hire, it was to create an RFP, you said in the end, and we need to look at that or approve it as a council before it's sent out.
So to create. Yeah, to create.
Read it again then, maybe I misunderstood you. That's advertise is for hire. That's the wrong term. To create is what Steve said, an RFP for a lobbyist for that position. That's what I understood.
Yeah.
Well, advertising, you're going out for hire then, but you need to see the RFP first to approve it. Jesus, how can you send out an RFP without the council seeing an RFP to send it out?
Okay.
That's my
To clarify,
issue.
Charlie, you want us to create the RFP and bring it back to the next committee of the whole for review before we send it? Correct, we will do that.
Isn't that standard procedure anyway?
Okay, that's what you meant to say, Councilor John, is that correct? Yeah, right, okay. So it's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. Roll call, please.
Beyondich. Johnson. Yes. Garantzelli. Huffy.
No.
Baraboo. Reedley. Paulson.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2.
4-3.
I mean, sorry, 4-3. No, does it pass? Yeah, it passes 4-3, because, yeah, so it passes 4-3. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. That was some spirited discussion.
That was a good discussion.
Okay,
The next item
let-
on the agenda is the golf professional contract also expires this year, and so we are looking for direction on if we should proceed with negotiating a new contract, or do you want to have a larger discussion about the future of the golf course? We're just looking for some direction on how to proceed with this one. And of course, the golf season doesn't start until May next year, but it'd be good to have somebody in place by January.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I can start. Yes, Brian, please come forward before I pontificate, I guess. Thank you. Brian, how are you this morning?
Doing well.
Thanks for your patience in waiting.
Yes.
So I guess, okay, for me, I'm sure you have as Brian, I would refer to you and staff to determine what the best approach is, but my opinion is that we have a professional golf course service right now, a service that we provide. We have Steve Fingerus's contract coming forward, which, he employs all the personnel at the golf course and those kind of things on a professional services contract. We have a greenskeeper that works under him by the name of Josh Kraus. And so there was some discussion, because I golf in the men's league, about where is this contract going? Are we going to have a contract this year? Or, or should they look at seeking other opportunities moving forward? So I told them at the group meeting that we are going to have that meeting today to determine what the next course of action is for the professional services for the golf course professional. So, Brian, do you have any information or anything that you'd like to give to the council moving forward and a recommendation?
At this point, we have several options. We can either begin negotiating a new contract. We can look at not negotiating a new contract and operating the golf course with city staff, which would mean hiring new people, or we can do what I would not recommend, which would be do away with the golf course. The golf course is a vital, important aspect in our community, and I think it would be a very bad decision to do away with the golf course. At this point, I would recommend that we move forward with negotiating a new contract with Mr. Fingeroos and for him to continue to manage the golf course. There are some things that I would like to do different in his contract. I would recommend, and I think it would be beneficial for the city to include a clause in there that we would do a profit sharing. As you are well aware, the golf course has operated in the red for quite some time. When we get to the point that the golf course is operating in the black, I think it would be very beneficial to us to do a profit sharing with not only the superintendent, but with all of the staff that is employed at the golf course. This gives, having a clause like this in their contract gives the employees of the golf course more of an incentive to watch the budget, more of an incentive to get us to the black rather than just spending what they see is needed.
Okay, so your recommendation is to move forward with city staff in attempting to negotiate a new contract for professional services with the current professional, Steve Fingeroos. Is that correct?
That is my recommendation.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of the council? Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I appreciate you presenting all options, including the last one, just because it's nice to know that there's a lot of options instead of one or two. I'm not a golfer, but I appreciate it. I do think that you are right about contracting with the existing folks, simply because of the need. Our recreation department is going to be changing quite significantly in the next several years. I will move to go with staff recommendation to renegotiate with the current golf professional moving forward and bring it back to the council.
All support.
Moved by Councilor Johnson to go by the recommendation of our Park and Rec Director and city staff to negotiate a contract, enter into negotiations of a contract for golf professional services, Mr. Steve Fingeroos, and supported by Councilor Baraboo. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just trying to find in the contract, I believe I read that the Tennis for All is underneath Mr. Fingeroos, is that correct? He's managing or working with that budget? And
He did at one time.
Did one time, he did their payroll at one time.
He did at one time.
okay, so that needs to be updated then if that's no longer the case in there. So that was my question. So where is that currently sitting?
Mr. Gunderson is now taking care of the Tennis for All.
So we have a specific person. Is that Tennis for All under Park and Rec budget?
Under Brian's, yes. Yep.
Okay, all right. I just needed that clarified on that contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Anybody else have any discussion? Councilor Freely.
I wanted to ask, like, it runs in the red to what degree, like, what, every year? I mean, average.
Over 100,000.
And
What is the depreciation on that, 100,000?
The depreciation mainly will fall under the restaurant, which is not part of the golf course.
So the golf course, there's no depreciation on the golf course?
I think there's 30 to 50, it's
think-
35,000. I
Maybe
think
it's
it's not
very
much.
small.
It's very, very
How
small.
much would it be?
35,000 of the 100.
35,000 of the 100,000. Well, that's significant. Thank you. Please continue, Counselor Philippe.
And so like the golf professional, what kinds of responsibilities does he have in trying to create additional programming or new programming or other efforts to increase that revenue to bring us closer to the black, like you said? Does he have those kinds of responsibilities within that contract, or?
Current contract is he oversees all the day-to-day operations of the golf course.
And so that programming piece would be under your jurisdiction, essentially?
It does fall under his. The contract allows for him to do golf lessons. He also oversees the different leagues that run through the golf course.
So that deficit then is a result of what? Lack of golfing participation primarily?
Weather is a lot of big thing.
Yeah.
If it's a really good season, it's a really small deficit. If it's a really bad season, it's really large.
It's
deficit.
weather
Weather
dependent.
dependent as
Weather
well.
weather dependent,
So
yes.
there's multiple factors that are involved in that.
Yes.
But there are efforts being made to bring that deficit back to the black as best as
Yes.
possible.
One of the things that has changed here in, especially this year, is our golf course's reputation. When I first started back in December and I would ask people about our golf course, I was told that it was a easy, average community golf course. What I have been hearing from many golfers is that our golf course this year has some of the best greens and best fairways and is one of the best kept golf courses in the area. We have people coming from Duluth that are saying we are the best golf course that they come to. That is a testimony to the job that the staff does there.
And so, Mr. Fingerus, in your opinion, you're fully confident in his competence as an administrative leader in that capacity?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Barnzelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, you told us at a Park and Rec meeting 2 months ago, Giants Ridge lowered their fees because of our competition, did they not?
Yes. Over the summer, Giants Ridge was losing their customers to us. So they were lowering their greens fees to try and attract our golfers.
From $103 down to $83, which is twice as much as we charge now.
Yes. So we are doing things the right way. We are still the best bang for your buck when it comes to golfing.
And I think a question to ask as well is that, you know, you have kept the thumb on the pulse of the costs associated with the green fees that we're charging and the cart rental fees that we're charging to the patrons that come here. And we are competitive and commensurate to places like out in the east, like west, like Eagle Ridge and in Pokegama and Rutgers and all these other places that provide their resort 18-hole golf courses, and we are commensurate with them and we do have a reciprocity agreement, do we not, with some of the other courses where if you play, you know, for a course there and you're tied in, you get it for the same price. So we do attract people, and I know it's because of the programs that you implemented there. I think that we operate as a deficit, and I don't have a problem with that as long as we can reduce it as much as we can, even if we could eliminate it. But it is an amenity that we provide our community, number one, because really Public Works and they do yeoman's work, outstanding work for us in order to provide services. That doesn't generate revenue. You know, the fire department doesn't generate revenue, the police doesn't generate revenue, and that's because they're core services. This is just a recreational service as opposed to a core service that we provide. And so by all the implementation of the staff and what you've done and keeping your thumb on the pulse of what's going on, that has significantly improved the condition of our course from 2018 to 2019, and that's reflected in the amount of plate we have for 2019. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson?
Mayor, I just want to compliment you on the profit sharing concept. I think that's really interesting, and it really would help to incentivize that. I've never heard of a city doing profit sharing, but I'd be really interested to maybe understand a little bit more about how that works. So if you could maybe enlighten us, that'd be great.
And we're not to that point yet. I mean, there is no profit. We're in the deficit. So, like, if you looked at last year's budget, if we look at historical data, so last year it operated in the red. So there'd be no profit sharing. But say they operated $10,000 in the black. So they made money over the course of the season. What I would recommend that we do is different tiers. For like $10,000, we do a profit sharing of X percent. From $10,000 to $50,000 of profit, we do a bigger percentage. So the more profit they make, the bigger, and you could almost call it a bonus at the end of the year, because you would figure it up at the end of the budget year, what they had, how they had operated, how far into the black, and then they would essentially get that check.
And I just appreciate that, just being creative. I really appreciate that, Brian. Thanks.
And part of the negotiation process, new contract will include that and many other things, whatever the contract employees are making, whatever Fingerroos is paying them, or whatever the case may be.
Yes.
All those are relative and inclusive in the contract moving forward for Mr. Fingerroos to have a budget where he can continue to maintain the course in a manner that's a higher standard, or a standard that we expect, right?
Absolutely.
Thank
We
you.
want our course to continue to grow its good reputation, because with a good reputation, golfers will continue to come. And don't forget, when we are bringing golfers from outside of Virginia to come to our golf course, such as the golfers that are coming from Duluth, it's not just the money that they are spending at the golf course, it's the economic impact that our golf course can provide for our community. If they go to the golf course, then they stop at the restaurant, they stop at the gas station, they may stop at some of the stores here in town, which is generating more revenue. So while today the golf course may still be operating in the red, if you look at some of the economic impact that the golf course is providing for the city of Virginia, it offsets that, but it is very difficult to track exactly what that economic impact is.
And I think all the tournaments that are coming forward, the demand for the tournaments, I know you're keeping it, at a level to ensure that you're not compromising the regular patronage. In addition to that, you have the senior tournament, where it brings hundreds of golfers, and you have the North Lakes tournament that brings hundreds of golfers too, which is imperative. And I think North Lakes, if my understanding is correctly, they're looking at coming a second time during the year to Virginia, only because of the condition of the course. So I thank you for all the work that you've done on this, and the staff for moving forward with that. And I think what's really made that also a winning operation is the fact that Public Works and Park and Rec are working together to maintain that golf course. Because if it wasn't for Public Works and all the in-kind service they provide, and the expertise that they have on how to repair those things and all the equipment that they use, we couldn't have that condition. The golf course couldn't be the way it is. So it's good. It's good cooperation between the two entities as well. So thank you. It's been moved and supported to move forward with city staff to negotiate a new contract with our golf course professional, Mr. Fingerroos. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify, Sherry?
Okay, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade here, but when Moody's does their annual review of our rating, there is going to be a concern about the golf course. It always has been. So the closer you can get it to the break-even point, the better. They don't look at what you're talking about, all the other benefits. They look at what's the bottom line.
which has been that way for a long time. Yes and no. Okay, thank you. Okay, moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Silber.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a review of the city hiring policy. Everybody should have received a copy.
I think this may take some significant discussion, maybe not.
I think maybe could we go through this one first, because we have to shut off the cameras we are live.
Oh, yeah, well, so, okay.
For the interviews.
Well, if you need to take a break, I mean.
If you need to run, Pam, please feel free. Go ahead.
Okay, I guess we have some time opportunities there, so, okay, thank you, please,
Yes,
continue.
yeah, for the city hiring policy, so in your packet is the hiring policy. There was a question, as in an email that I indicated to all the council members regarding the hiring of department heads and supervisors. The hiring interview process states in the current policy that it is the city administrator, the HR director, the mayor, and in parentheses, it says, or 2 city councilors. So I think that's some vagueness, and it needs to be cleaned up, is my suggestion, that we clarify it.
So let me just start. Whatever staff recommends, whatever the council decides that what they want to do, I'll support whatever that is. Whatever clarity that you feel you can get from this hiring policy, it's important that we clarify it so that there's no misunderstanding of the hiring policy, how it works, the interview process moving forward. So whether it's public or private, whatever you discuss, whatever you decide, that's fine with me. So do you have a recommendation from staff about this, or is
I do
this
not have a
something for opening
recommendation.
up for
I just have a
discussion?
suggestion that we
Okay.
clarify it further.
Okay, let's do that. Does anybody have anything? Otherwise, we can maybe set up a regular committee meeting. Counselor Bearable.
Yeah, I was going to suggest we set up a regular committee meeting for that, because I have a possible solution to this without actual discussion, but it should go through the actual committee process. So I think it would solve that one issue that we have with the supervisory personnel.
Well, right now, we have a personnel committee of the whole meeting to review the hiring policy. So do you want to discuss it now? I think it's important that we do, and then if we have to move forward else at some future time, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest, Mayor, and it's only in the one section where we're hiring supervisory personnel, that the initial hiring committee should consist of the HR individual, administration, and one member of the personnel committee, either the chair or one of the other members. It can't be more than one, because then you end up with an open meeting law violation, because the committee, if you have 2 out of 3, it ends up as an open meeting from that committee, because that committee is 3 people, so you should have just one, either be the chairperson or one other that's designated if the chairperson can't be there. But those 3 people do the initial screen, depending on how many applicants there are. Then the final screening goes to the full council.
So can you have, would you suggest that maybe if your suggestion is to have one member of the personnel committee, could it be prudent to have another representative from the council that's not on the personnel committee? So you have 2 council members present, one representing the personnel committee, the other part of the council during the initial interviews?
That's another possibility, as long as they don't end up on the same committee,
Right.
which they wouldn't.
Yeah, we wouldn't want an open meeting law
That would
issue
be all
there.
right, that would be all right, too. You could add an additional person to that, just so you don't end up with a quorum of the council somehow.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Bearable. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I kind of agree, and I get where you're going. I think that would probably be a good solution. I guess the larger question that I have is, when this was originally drafted back in 03/29/07, amended on 12/09/14, and re-amended on 05 of 2018. I'd like to get those amendments if we could, just to understand what those changes look like over the course of those amended years. But when this was originally drafted in 2007, the structure of the council was different than what it is now, regarding the committee process. So now we're more into a committee of the whole. So I think this comes into a much larger discussion regarding what these committees really, what is, excuse me, what are their functions? And, you know, yes, two or more together is a quorum, so, you know, I understand that we need to be staggered to not violate open meeting law. But I guess, you know, when this was originally drafted, it was based on the committee structure, which we really are not, in my opinion, on that committee structure. Because if we were, we'd be having those individual meetings within, like you were saying, maybe the personnel committee should meet about this, but it's very vague to me as to how committees are actually conducted, committee meetings are conducted, and what the function actually is in a, you know, how does the council or committee of the whole, how are we utilizing committees and the committee structure? So, I mean, I don't want to open up a can of worms, but I feel like this original draft from 2007 was when the council was at that committee structure. And I think that the changes that you're suggesting are good changes. But some of those headers, like a non-represented, and then department head, supervisor, including chiefs, those now would be MAPE union employees, is that correct?
If they so choose, we cannot direct them to go into MAPE. And they were always in MAPE. MAPE has always been here. We just can't dictate that an employee enters into the MAPE union.
Okay, because we do have AFSCME employee on that chart.
Yep.
And I'm not seeing MAPE.
Yep.
So I don't know if that needs to be clarified. Because a department head, supervisor, including chiefs, would be non-represented if they are not in MAPE. Is
It
that
would be
correct?
fair share is what they would be.
Wait, say that again?
Fair share, it's called, where they choose not to be in the MAPE union.
So would that employee be considered a non-represented employee?
No, non-represented have their own separate contracts.
Okay.
So we can list MAPE. We can.
I
word
just
it
want
some
a
way.
little
Yeah,
bit
we
more
can-
clarification on when this hiring process goes into place.
On who is who.
Yeah, which union is represented, and, you know, then let's follow the chain of command down the chart, which I feel fine about. I think the other thing I would like to add there is some email communication regarding the amount of applicants. I think that would be helpful for the council to know, did we have only 5 applicants or did we have 100 applicants? So maybe that would be something that we could incorporate into the hiring policy. And then again, if we could just maybe get a copy of those dates the hiring policy was amended, I would appreciate that.
Counselor Johnson?
Thank you. I too would like some of the clarification when it comes to the titles. Such as MAPE or similar position, you know.
Kind of the heading I'm thinking that we're alluding
Yeah.
to is MAPE or similar position, if that's okay with you? Okay.
And I too agree with, you know, it's the committee of the whole structure. I understand the logic because then everybody's here all at the same time. So if there's 2 committee meetings of the smaller committees, you can't be there. But it seems that we're bouncing between committee of the whole, committee of the whole, depending on. And I think as we're moving forward, and I know this isn't specifically hiring policy, but it plays in, if we had some definition of what that meant. Because I would like to, I don't like when it says the personnel chair or 2 counselors. To me, that is giving more authority to one person as opposed to 2. I would prefer there be, if it's a committee, if we're doing the personnel committee, a personnel committee person, and then an additional counselor not on the committee. That way, we are balancing that. And my understanding of open meeting is that even if there were 2 people from the personnel committee on there, it's still an open posted meeting. So it would be okay anyway, if it was posted that way.
Yes, but for the public's sake or for the interviewee's sake,
Right.
we don't like to post our interviews because Some
Yeah,
people come
absolutely.
in there with the premise that we're here confidentially, that their employer doesn't know they applied for the job. So that's our hesitation with having two
Absolutely,
personnel.
yep. But I think if we clarified that and even put it in the policy that that's what we're trying to avoid is
Absolutely.
violating privacy of our applicants.
Right. We can absolutely state that if at any time two committee members are in the interview, it will be posted so that everybody's clear that,
And then the interviewees, would they have the ability to request a private interview then, or?
somebody would have to back out of the two
one of
personnel
the
committee. Yeah.
Okay, and that's definitely makes sense to me.
So I think where Julianne and Charlie were kind of leading to, that if it was one personnel committee member and one non-personnel committee member were in there, then there's two people, not quorum.
And then I've never been in one of those interviews when there's the personnel committee chair is present. Who is actually running the interviews? Should you do, okay. that- I
Greg
wanted-
conducts all interviews.
Yeah, the HR, okay, I
director.
wanted to make sure about that. And then my final thing is, I would really like us to enforce the hiring policy in all of the departments. If we have a city policy that says we're gonna take 100 candidates, we're going to, I'll be honest, I skimmed this, I didn't read it word for word, but my concern is that we have spent 3 days hiring a plethora of candidates for a position, and that interview committee ends up being a chief, an assistant chief, a division chief. That to me is not a good use of public resources, that we need to follow this protocol for all departments, and if we need to make that a formal motion, I'm more than willing to do that, but if we can get to there as we move forward, because it's a lot of money sitting, I've walked in on this meeting when there's a lot of white shirts sitting around the table to interview entry level, and I do not think that's a great use of our resources.
I beg to disagree, because what the hiring policy states is 2 fire department members, and oftentimes everybody else that's not busy is the ones that come here. So usually those that are in the rigs, they do that priority staffing. So first out, second out, third out, fourth out.
Yep.
And so they usually try to grab the person that's fifth and sixth out, so that they're thinking that they're gonna be able to sit through the whole interview and not get called out.
Okay.
So that's why there's so many white shirts here. Those are usually the last to go,
Okay,
and everybody else is out staffing the ambulances and the fire apparatus.
but we don't need to be interviewing all of the candidates, is that?
We don't interview all the candidates. We do a ranking system for candidates.
He's raising her finger at me.
I'm sorry, Brett, if I could step in. Yes, in the past, we have done that, and I know you've been here. But no, me and Brett have both said this is too encumbering for us as staff to be setting aside 2 days. So we do have a ranking system now, and I think that the chief and the deputy chief have seen that there is an actual dividing line when you have a ranking system.
I appreciate knowing that. Thank you very much.
You're right, I'm sorry, back in future years, yes, they used to just interview every single person that applied, 24 people in all. We don't do that anymore. We have a criteria in there, minimum qualification, they all get points based on the minimum qualifications. Sherry mentioned there is a natural divide, usually those that just apply because they have to as part of their unemployment.
Yes, yep.
And those that apply
Been
that are
there.
really qualified. So,
Okay, thank you for those clarifications.
Okay. With that, the mayor had stepped out, so he asked me if I would take over. I think we're at a point where we need to come back with a specific meeting on this, Britt.
we'll make the suggested changes as we've heard today, Sherry and I, and we'll come back to the next committee of the whole, if that's okay with everybody.
that
With some
okay?
changes.
Okay. So we don't need a motion on
I
that.
think Julianne might have something more.
Oh, I'm
she'd like
sorry,
to say.
Julianne. I didn't see her light there. I know you're close enough, I should see it.
No, I just wanted to ask for some clarification. So when there is a specific committee meeting, like say it's insurance or personnel, can any counselor come and sit in on those meetings? But we have to have notification that those meetings are taking place. Is that correct? But is it different, or is it different for the hiring process, which is, I think, what I was experiencing extreme frustration with last week? Like, is that a private,
Not an open public meeting, interviews.
but if counselors can sit in, like when we've had insurance meetings, the people in the
That's an
committee.
open public meeting.
Those are posted.
Okay, so what you're saying is counselors cannot then
into the interview
Only if the interview is posted as a public meeting.
meeting.
And then anybody could sit in, and we'd have to keep the doors open.
Okay, so, and it's always been practiced that it's closed or not?
Except for supervisors, when we get to the point of
Pam,
department
I'm
heads.
asking Pam.
Sorry.
Yes. And I guess we had talked about this earlier, Sherry and I, about observing. So I don't know if they could still observe because we're not really,
State law says if they're in their room, they're quorum.
okay.
Okay, so this is my issue because we've had this in the past where it's a committee of the whole, but it's personnel, or say it's insurance, and the insurance committee is at the table, but you've all been here. There's been other counselors here, so
That has been posted. So we do post the committee meetings for the 3 that are on that committee.
So it's basically because personnel is not being posted?
The interview is not being posted as a meeting.
Okay, I think I understand that.
So the committee meetings of the 3 counselors are always posted, and any other counselor can attend, but they just can't really say anything or vote on anything like that.
But we just said, you guys were discussing that, and it's state law, so are we breaking
No, on the interview part.
just on the interview
Yes.
part? Okay, so there are different rules for the personnel, that the personnel committee would be guided under.
If
If
it's
it's a
posted as
hiring,
personnel committee and you're conducting interviews, then yes, any counselor could sit in on it. And anybody from the public. But if it's only the interviews and you have one counselor, you don't have a quorum of.
and so my question then was, what was past practice that our council has done, or, I mean, not our council, but the city in the past?
For department heads?
Just department heads or
Okay,
that
'cause there-
process.
I sent you all the personnel policies from old to new, and unfortunately, they're not in any order. Sorry. For department heads in the past, and we're talking 15, 20 years ago, it was I was interviewed twice by the whole council and department heads, and I assumed it was a public meeting. I mean, it was open. And since then, they've tried to make it so that it isn't a public meeting, but just like Pam said, if you have more than one there and it's a personnel, it's going to be a public interview. I personally have been in public interviews, me as a recipient, the interviewee. So it has been conducted by other cities that way.
Okay, so is that, I don't mean to drill down on this, but I need clarification. So is that part in our hiring policy? Is that stated that these are private so that everyone, that's communicated to not only a council body, but people that are coming for interviews?
It is
That
not
part of our policy?
stated that way in our policy, no.
Should that be?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe we'd like to add that? If okay?
Well, Britt will bring back a
Yeah, I will add that.
revised,
Okay.
Thank you, Julianne.
and then we'll discuss the next committee of the whole. Okay, any other questions that anybody has? I can't see lights from my position where I'm sitting right now. I don't see any or anybody raising their hand, so with that, the hiring process, Britt will bring back, along with the help from Sherry, bring back an updated to our next committee of the whole meeting, and we'll finish this up. Okay? With that, Britt, I think you've got one more.
We do. Can we take a break now? I know
Yep.
Pam needs to go, and we will close down the televised portion
Yep.
of this meeting. And thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll
Okay,
take a
let's
break.
take a quick break.